When was the last time you led with calm instead of control? Have you ever won an argument but lost the student? That's a tough one. I've been there before. I had those moments where I felt like I had won the argument, but I could tell as the student walked away that I had just lost the student. I didn't see the opportunity in front of me to build relationship through a disciplinary situation. Discipline's not about getting back at the student. It's about giving them a path forward. When you lead with calm, it gives you as the teacher the ability to turn discipline and disciplinary situations into relationship building situations. Hey teachers, welcome to the Lead, Serve, Teach podcast, where we explore the intersection of leadership, education, and personal growth. I'm your host, D.Paul Miller, and I'm so glad you've joined me here today for a little real talk and some powerful conversation. You know, recently I've had a lot of educators approach me and they ask me about the same thing. It's about the same hot button issue in education right now. And now some people might jump to finance and financing education. And some people may talk about teacher shortages, which I talk a lot about actually. But one of the biggest hot button issues, especially post-COVID right now, maybe this specific topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about because, well, to be honest, a lot of people don't have answers for this issue. And the issue I'm talking about over the next three-part series on this what I call education's biggest hot button issue right now, and that is discipline. And really, I want to focus on how we as educators can lead through it, dignity, empathy, and strength. One of the most interesting experiences I had in the classroom happened about, I guess, maybe 10 years into my teaching career. I'd been teaching at a inner city school, mostly 11th and 12th grade courses, social studies to be exact. And I remember a specific U.S. government course. Now, it sticks out in my mind, this one incident that happened to me in the classroom. It sticks out because it happened during first period, the quiet period, if you will, especially at high school. My high school teachers out there, you know what I mean. First period of the day, usually you're just trying to wake up all of the students and get them engaged. And so it was interesting that I had this discipline issue pop up during first period. The first period class I had was a pretty sharp group of students. And I remember one specific day, I was starting the lesson and, we were probably talking about interest groups and their impact on government. Something like that. And I remember opening up the lesson. I always started every lesson with a life lesson from Mr. Miller, a personal story I would tell about something I did in when I was their age, when I was in high school, when I was in college. Specifically, most of the time, mistakes that I had made, a good story that they could learn from and help develop that relationship so that they could see me as a real person that made mistakes and someone that they could approach and have real conversations with, just like I'm having with you today. And so I'd made it through the life lesson and I'd gotten into the what, why, and the how of my lesson. Something I started every day. Again, as soon as I finished my life lesson, I would go directly into the what, why, and how of the lesson. And what I mean by that is I would actually start off with what we were learning. I'd make sure the students knew where we were headed. Sometimes it's like starting off on a trip and you really don't know where you're headed and you're just following somebody in front of you going, well, I hope they know where they're going. That's not a great feeling. And so I'd want to tell my students what we were learning that day, the specific content piece that we were looking at. I would want to also develop a why behind the lesson. This obviously, this wasn't me just telling them why. I would always want my students to jump in there and I would try to put out some questions to kind of get their minds thinking, why is this important? I would let them develop their own why for the lesson. When it was their why, my students' why behind the lesson and not my own why as the teacher, man, what a difference that made in the level of engagement. So I'd always go to the why next and then the how. I would also tell them how they would know, not just me, but how they would know as the students that they had learned that specific content piece, that they had mastered that specific skill for the day. And so I'd gone through that and had started my instruction. And I remember, this class being a little bit sleepy, typically in the mornings, and I would have to oftentimes prod them to get them going with the engagement in the lesson. I would maybe implement a Kagan strategy or something like that to get them moving and literally get their bodies moving so that they would wake up and engage. And, again, this class that normally stayed on point, this class that normally engaged in the right way, I had an issue as I was jumping into the collaborative portion of the lesson. I just asked a big question, and the students were about to break out into groups and do some studying of specific primary source documents to come up with conclusions, some answers to the question I posed to them. And at this point, as I was giving instructions on where the students needed to go, how they were going to be grouped, two specific students on opposite ends of the classroom, I'm not even quite sure exactly what spurred the issue. They obviously had a disagreement with each other, and it became such a disagreement that all of a sudden they were talking, no one else was. And I realized that I was no longer able to even give directions to the other students in the class because these two students were, oh gosh, they were the words they were using. They were about to come to blows with each other. It was actually very, very surprising that this was happening. Again, first period when everyone's half asleep. And I remember stopping both of them. And of course, I continued on with the class. I continued to give out the directions, tell everyone what they were going to do. And I remember looking to my student on my right, and I said, hey, I need to see you out in the hallway real quick. And so, of course, I didn't want everyone just to go into doing the assignment and have these two young men actually in the room and possibly even paired up together. That would have been a disaster. So I knew I needed to separate the two. And I remember taking him out, and this specific student, he was actually one of the leaders in the school. He was a leader in the ROTC program, and the military prep program, if you will. And I remember taking him out in the hallway and having a discussion with him. And I was just like, hey, what, just trying to figure out what just happened in there? Why did this escalate to such a degree where they were yelling at each other, and it almost seemed like they were ready to come to blows. And of course, for this student, he told me that he felt very strongly about the specific topic. This was a government course. As you can guess, politics were related here. And so these two gentlemen, I found out, fell on opposite sides of the spectrum, if you will, politically speaking. And I ended up asking him some more questions, and it turned out that he simply was in disagreement with this other student about political things, about things that, well, in reality were things happening at the national and state level. And it was interesting. And there was a moment where I was like, well, I think I can use this. As the government teacher, you would be excited when you see, oh man, my students are really excited about this. This is awesome. They feel passionate about what's going on. Well, no, gosh, that's great. As far as being a government teacher, that's great. However, having your students jump directly to an inappropriate communication style, having your students jump directly into controversy, having them jump directly into meeting that controversy head to head in a almost violent way was quite disturbing. It was quite surprising. And I remember talking to the young man and referencing his role as a leader in that school, as even a quasi leader in my classroom. I really started to point out that, a lot of students, even when I would ask questions, a lot of them would maybe even look to him to maybe have that first answer. And he would actually spur on the conversation and spur on the discussions in the classroom. He was a quasi leader, an informal leader in the classroom, and yet he didn't even know it. And I remember as I started to discuss his, I guess you could say, position as a leader in the school, as a leader in my classroom, I remember his demeanor changed from somebody that was righteously angry about supporting his beliefs and his side of politics and his thinking, to somebody that was ready to listen, to somebody that was ready to be a part of the class, to be a part of the discussion, and not be someone that was rising to the occasion and causing chaos. It's quite interesting. As I walked him back into class, seeing his heart change. And I in fact asked him, I said, I would appreciate it if you would in fact apologize to the other student at some point before class is over. I remember as soon as I led him into the class, I asked the other gentleman out of the classroom to come see me very quickly. And I start asking this other student, what just happened in there? We've never had an outburst like this. This is not how we operate in our class. This is way outside of Mr. Miller's expectations. What's going on? This student, funny enough, was a leader in the school's band. This was a leader in the chorus group and a leader in multiple areas, including my classroom, where we talked a lot about government and politics and the issues of the day. And I realized as I'm talking to him, the same case was true for him. I said, you are a leader in my class. You're an informal leader, and you don't even realize that a lot of students would look to him as well to lead conversations, to maybe start ideas and to start discussions. And I started explaining it to him. And as I was talking to him about kind of expectations for him as a leader, I remember seeing his shoulders kind of start sinking down a little bit. And he told me, he's just like, you know what, Mr. Miller, I'll be honest, I'm the cause of that problem there. I was the one that actually made a comment to the other student, knowing that he was on the opposite side of the aisle, so to speak, politically speaking. So it was interesting that his shoulders went down and he started to claim responsibility actually for that moment. And then he went on to say, you know what, my mom's been sick. She was in and out of the hospital last week. And I just haven't been getting a lot of sleep, and I'm doing all the band practice and all this kind of stuff. And it started to give me some understanding about where he was coming from and how he let his emotions, how he let his, maybe even his political beliefs get the best of him and start a war, kind of, to start an argument, to start something that was almost to the point of blows with each other, almost a fight, physical fight in the classroom. And I saw him take responsibility for it. I saw the leader side of him step up and decide that he was going to take 100% responsibility for his actions. It was amazing to see as, again, I ushered him back into the classroom saying the same thing. I would appreciate it if you would offer an apology to the other student. And it was amazing having that happen in my class. What started as a disciplinary situation and could have taken me way off track from that lesson, could have distracted and detracted from everything that was happening in that classroom at that moment, the learning that was happening in there. It could have all been taken away had I allowed that discipline event, that moment where these two students and their anger and their hatred almost towards each other were coming to a head in this moment. And I could have let that totally destroy the classroom, when instead it really became an opportunity. It became an opportunity for me to lead the way, for me to help other leaders in the class see their position, to see their role as a leader. Calm tone that I approached them with, I think made a big difference. You know, in that moment where they're way up here in their tone, they're way up here in their anger, and they're about to explode, and then they're met with a calm question. It's amazing to see how quickly the demeanor changed. We started focusing more on the choices that they themselves had made through the questions I was asking. The conversation that we were having in the hallway, with both students, it became more about the choices they were making and not so much about their character or the other person's character, more about the choices they should be making as a leader themselves. One of my favorite coaches, John Wooden, amazing coach, won so many national titles at UCLA in basketball. And he was famous for saying a statement. He said, discipline's not about getting back at the student. It's about giving them a path forward. And this is where I came up with this idea that, in reality, when you lead with calm, it really helps you turn disciplinary situations into relationship building opportunities. It's amazing when you start emphasizing the choices that are made and not so much the character of the person and not so much the character of the other person maybe they have a problem with. And it becomes all about their choices that they made and a refocus, a redirection, maybe even on some better choices and why. Focusing now again on that why. And in reality, use questions. Questions are a great way to start learning. Questions are also a great way to help students develop their own why. And again, that can be used in getting them behind and engaged in a lesson. And it can also be extraordinarily valuable in disciplinary situations when you're having that conversation with the student and you ask the right questions that get them to develop their own why behind good choices, behind making the right decisions. Man, it becomes powerful and it builds that relationship with the student rather than making it all about just getting back at the student or keeping it in that cold, dry land of, this is what the disciplinary matrix says, or this is what the student code of conduct says, and we're just leaving it there, and we're not even going to have any more discussions about it. Well, when we live in that zone with discipline, we're really missing those relationship building opportunities, which can make all the difference for students academically, and relations make all the difference for students relationally. I have a quick, what I call a lead, serve, teach framework that I'd like to share here as we're talking about more of these moments. Okay, Paul, it's a great story, but tell me more about the actions I can take. Tell me more about a framework that I can use every day and keep in my mind, a simple thing I can ask myself as I'm going through these disciplinary situations. And for me, it's 3 easy questions that you need to ask yourself. I line these out in my best-selling book, Hey Teachers, Don't Quit. The very last chapter is all about discipline and the opportunity that's presented. It's discipline is not a necessary evil. It's not just a necessary process we have to do. No, discipline is opportunity. Discipline is opportunity to show our students the right way. It's the opportunity to build relationship. It's the opportunity to, in fact, this sounds weird, but discipline is an opportunity to help build the foundation of learning. Another great statement a lot of people know is whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. And discipline kind of has to help build that foundation, if you will, for learning, for knowledge to happen. And so the 3 questions I want to give you today that you can stick in your brain and start saying, okay, any given discipline situation, what can I do? Where can I start? Where is my foundation as the educator in a disciplinary situation? And the first thing I want to say is ask yourself, how can I lead through this situation? If you've watched any of my podcast or if you've read my book, Hey Teachers, Don't Quit, if you've seen me on stage anywhere or had me at a consultation or anything like that, you know my premise, you know my belief that every teacher is a leader. And in a disciplinary situation, as an educator, if you're not asking yourself, how can I lead through this conversation? Well, I think it's time to make a little switch in the old brain, in the old mindset up here and say, okay, how can I lead through this situation? It's an interesting question. One, if you don't consider yourself a leader, it kind of puts you in that mindset of saying, okay, I'm a leader. I'm going to believe that I'm a leader. And how would this change my reaction to this situation, this disciplinary situation? Second question is, and this is getting a little bit tougher as we go, a little bit more into the heart land now. How can I lead through this situation is all up here in the brain. And then it needs to come down here into the heart. The next question, the second question you ask yourself is, who and how can I serve in this situation? Who's the person I can serve in this disciplinary situation? How can I serve them through this situation? Again, I said it earlier, don't miss the opportunity. Every disciplinary situation, every disciplinary action is an opportunity to teach. It's an opportunity to build relationship. It's an opportunity to build that foundation of knowledge. Again, in John Wooden's word, it's providing a path forward for those students. So as you start looking at what options I have in this situation, start looking for those options that are going to serve the very student maybe that is the cause of the disciplinary situation. It's kind of mind altering sometimes to sit there in that mindset. We live in a world that says, hey, this person did something wrong, you should get revenge. This person did something wrong, there should be payback. They should pay for the wrong that they've done. And in reality, when you look in so many of those situations where that revenge is taken, or that person has to pay the penance, more often than not, people come away from that on all sides feeling less than, feeling unfulfilled. Whereas you hear so many stories on the flip side of that, where people offer forgiveness, people offer a path forward, people offer options that are in fact serving those individuals that cause the discipline situation. It's in those moments, again, where the relationship is built. It's where they come away feeling fulfilled. And teachers, for us as educators, it's no different. finding those paths forward, helping our students get there. That's exactly what we get into the profession for in the first place, to help them find success. And I think personally, even in disciplinary situations, we have to adopt that same mindset. And then again, to take that one step further, the third question is always, what can I teach from this situation? How can I take this back into the classroom? It may be in a formal way, where you're taking it back and teaching maybe a whole group about decision making, or it could be in an informal way. It can have informal effects in how you teach your classroom. It's interesting, when I went back into the classroom, and of course there was I wouldn't say it was a formal moment where these two boys came back together and shook hands and apologized to each other and made it right. In fact, became friends after that moment. The other students seeing that, it provided, I guess you could say that the air in the room changed, and it provided a sense of safety, a sense of belonging, a sense of security in that classroom, where they saw two of the leaders, the informal leaders in the classroom, coming together, even though they had disagreements, even though, again, in this government class, teaching politics, where where they came together and in fact said, you know what, we want to make this right. We want to do the right thing. We want to lead as students here. And it was amazing how that improved the teaching situation. It improved the learning environment in my classroom in an informal way. And it was amazing to sit there and see that. One of my favorite authors, Ken Blanchard, a leadership expert, he has a different way of saying it. And it says, when we're free to overlook offenses and forgive the errors of others, we can lead people to reach their full potential. Like, wow. When I read that statement from Ken Blanchard, I sit back and go, wow, that is exactly what we need to do and want to do as teachers, right? I mean, we are literally there. We're in a profession to lead people, to help people, to push people to be their full self, to reach their full potential. And he says it has a lot to do with overlooking those offenses and forgiving those and the errors of others. For today, I want to ask a simple question to you. When was the last time you led with calm instead of control? One other question, a little follow-up question on that one, is, have you ever won an argument but lost the student? That's a tough one. I've been there before. I had those moments where I felt like I had won the argument, but I could tell as the student walked away that I had just lost the student. I didn't see the opportunity in front of me to build relationship through a disciplinary situation. I wasn't asking my questions. I wasn't asking myself the important questions of, how can I lead in this situation? And in what ways can I serve this person in front of me? And what can I even take and teach to this student or other students through this situation? Those can make all the difference in not just winning the argument, but also winning the student. And it all starts with leading with calm instead of control. So often we have those moments in our classroom, we look back on them and we say, man, I wish I could have done that maybe a little bit different. And again, maybe that question about winning the argument but losing the student resonates with you. If you want to, go ahead and you can share that story below. As always, don't use any names of students. Keep those confidential. But you can share about the situation and what you learned in that situation, and maybe share what it might have looked like if you would have led with calm and served first, rather than being focused on the argument, winning the argument, and maintaining that control. Simon Sinek says leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in our charge. So I'm going to leave you with that today. I want to encourage you to, again, come back here, catch us on the next episode as we continue discussing this hot button topic of discipline. And I'm going to continue to give you some tools to use. You can put them in your tool belt and continue to use those at your school, in your classroom, to create relationship, to establish the best learning environments, and make sure that you're giving your absolute best to your students. So until next time, remember, you're not just a teacher, you're a change maker. So keep striving, keep inspiring, and don't quit. I'm D.Paul Miller. I'll see you here for the next episode.